Morning, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. I'm Dean Baas. I'm with Michigan State University Extension. I'm actually located in St. Joseph County, work out of the Kellogg Biological Station. I work primarily statewide on cover crop programs, sustainable ag, a little bit of organic agriculture. I've given you each a sheet. I've got two projects I'd like to talk to you about today. They're both funded by the Michigan Wheat Program. The first one are the plots that you're looking at right here. And this is a 3-year study where we're looking at putting wheat back into the rotation and how that affects the profitability of the entire rotation. We're looking at doing it for 3 years. Hopefully, if things go well, we get funded for an additional time because we'd like this to be a long-term study. We're doing this study in 2 locations. We're doing it here. These are the plots you're looking at right here, and we're also doing it on the agronomy farm in East Lansing. So we've got 2 different locations, 2 different soil types, and some differences in practices. What we're looking at here is we're comparing continuous corn, continuous soybeans, a corn, soybean, corn, a soybean, corn, soybean, then corn, soybean, wheat with and without cover crops. And we're doing all entry points, so it's a pretty complex project. You can see all the plots laid out here in corn, soybean, and wheat. This research extends all the way back to where you can see the line out there. So there's 4 reps of every one of those treatments. We're looking at it with and without cover crops. So what we'll be comparing is we can compare just the straight rotations with and without wheat in them. Then we'll also be looking at those rotations including cover crops. And we're going to be monitoring yields, the amount of pesticides we need, the amount of herbicides we need, the amount of fertilizer we need to apply to the plots, number of field operations, all those types of things. And part of where this project came out of was some work that was done at the University of Guelph, where they found that when they had wheat in the rotation, they got on average a 25 bushel yield increase in corn. And they also found that they got a 4 to 6 bushel yield increase in soybeans just by having wheat back in the rotation, providing that diversity. Then they also did a study where they included red clover, and the red clover added to the system gave them another 8 bushels per acre increase on the corn. So basically with wheat and red clover in the rotation, they found they could get a 20 bushel per acre increase just by having that combination. So we think it's important to look at the whole system so we can, instead of evaluating just year to year, what's the price of wheat and do I want to put wheat in, what's it look like over the whole 3-year period as far as what the economics are and the impact on the system. So that's the study we've got going on here. Should be going on for 3 years, also going on in East Lansing. Now this project is funded by all 3 commodity groups. So the wheat growers, corn growers, and soybean growers are all jointly funding this project because it includes all those crops. So that's a jointly funded project. The second project I want to tell you about, we don't have going on here, but we've got going on in 4 locations and at KBS, is a study to look at mixing oilseed radish with wheat at planting and the effect on yield. There were reports starting a few years ago that farmers that had done that saw a yield bump just by mixing in oilseed radish when they planted their wheat. We heard this a bunch of times, we thought that, but they didn't have controls side by side to test it. They just were reporting that they thought they had a yield increase. So we thought it warranted a study to find out if that was real. So last year we did, the wheat growers funded a project to look at that. It was done up in Bay City on John Burke's farm in Ravenna, at Dean Cantola's farm, and at Henry Miller's farm in Centerville. All 3 locations we saw a yield increase due to the oilseed radish.
Winter wheat, right?
Yep, winter wheat. And that it ranged from 2 bushels per acre up to almost 5 bushel an acre. And it turns out at 2 bushel an acre, you basically break even on your oilseed radish seed. So anything above 2 bushels per acre is money in your pocket. So we saw it on every farm, said, well, this may be real. We're still trying to explain it. But one of the things we found in that first study was the one that was planted that got 2 bushels per acre was the last wheat planted of the 3 farms. The one that got the biggest yield bump was the earliest planted wheat. So there's a planting date effect. All of those were planted at 3 pounds of oilseed radish per acre, which is not really that much oilseed radish. So this year we're doing it on 4 farms. We've added Jerry Heck to the mix down in Monroe, and we're also doing it at KBS. On all the farms we're looking at 3 pounds per acre again. At Centerville, at Henry Miller's location, he's looking at 3 different seeding rates, 1.5 pounds, 3 pounds, and 4.5 pounds to see if there's a oilseed radish rate effect. And at KBS, we're looking at not only those 3 seeding rates, but we're looking at 3 different planting dates to try to sort out the planting date effect. So we're doing that again. We're getting not too far off from wheat harvest, and hopefully we will have the data here real soon. We'll be writing up a report after we get that, and it'll be something that should be available that we'll give to the wheat program, and they'll put it up on their websites. But we're kind of excited to see if we get that same kind of across the board yield increase this in a second year. And these were done, this was field scale. We basically did drill width strips of oilseed radish, no oilseed radish, oilseed radish, no oilseed radish, on like 40-acre fields. So picking it up at that that scale, we thought was pretty important. So, anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Is that supposed to take the place of the clover then? Is that the thought of the radishes?
No, I mean, basically, it's all we do is mix it right in with the wheat. We don't at 3 pounds per acre. If you wanted to have clover too, I would think that you could probably put clover too and still do the oilseed radish. I don't know what the effect would be, but
the radishes died when the frost came, right?
When the radishes die when the frost comes. And to be honest, I mean, I've been out there looking at those and counting the number of radishes. For that short a growing season, the radishes don't get much taller than about this. The roots on the radishes maybe get to be at most a ½ inch around, maybe about 13 inches deep. So it's not like you get those big radishes that everybody sees, those great big honking oilseed radish where they hold it up and they're really proud of it, you know? We're nowhere close to those kind of radishes. And that's why we're really interested in, you know, we're trying to explain why this would be happening, what the effect is. Is it the brassica? Does it give you some additional channels in the soil so you get a little bit better water infiltration? Does it have some weed suppression capabilities? We're still kind of trying to figure out how that effect is actually occurring.
That radish is actually supposed to take up quite a bit of nitrogen, right?
It will take up nitrogen, but then one of the things we're finding with oilseed radish is it decays so quickly because it's a brassica. It's like cabbage and, you know, turnips and those types of things. And so when it decays really quick. They have a lot of water in them, and so it takes up a lot of nitrogen. It may be the wheat's the ideal system because it puts it back into the system when the wheat can use it. That might be another reason why it works for wheat, where at other crops it winter kills, goes back into the soil, and may actually get away before the next crop can use it.
You didn't see any issues with the brassica growing faster than the wheat and starting to shade it out at all? Or?
No, not at all. No, the wheat pretty much, you know, beat it out. And you have to, in the fall, I mean, once it winter kills, you really have to hunt to find the oilseed. You know, it's not like you walk up to a wheat the wheat field and you go, oh, there it is, there it is. I mean, you have to really kind of look for it because it's not that, and it's only 3 pounds an acre. I mean, that is a pretty light seeding rate that we were using. It's not, it's not like at 8 or 10 pounds per acre, which you'd see a lot more of. It's only 3 pounds an acre. So, as far as oilseed radish, we just have used the standard daikon oilseed radish. We did a study at the Rose Lake Plant Material Center a few years ago, and we looked at all those different oilseed radish products like Groundhog. They've branded Groundhog. We looked at variety not stated. We looked at daikon. We looked at a whole bunch of different oilseed radishes. To be honest, we could not find any measurable difference between all the different types of oilseed radish that were out there. They all had similar growth rates. They had similar biomass production, similar root. Maybe a little bit different in getting to flowering if you let them go long enough, so there may be a maturity difference. But we actually could not really find any difference between all those different types, which the people that brand theirs as being better probably don't like to hear, but that's what the results said.
You just physically mix the seed in the planter box?
Yep, we've got people who have done it all different ways. Dean Cantola gets his oilseed radish seed, takes it to the elevator and says, mix it in at this amount. And they mix it and deliver his wheat with it already mixed in. John Burke has a loading wagon. So as he's loading the wheat in, he just sprinkles the oilseed radish on top of the auger and lets that mix it going into the box. This year, I helped Jerry Heck do his this year, and all we did was he dumped in a couple bags of wheat. I dumped in some oilseed radish, mixed it up with the broom handle, dumped in some more, dumped in a little bit more. Yeah, there's nothing. There doesn't seem to be that it has to be extremely, well mixed, or, I mean, I'm sure that it was adequately mixed, and it doesn't appear that there's a segregation problem like you get a whole bunch of oilseed radish in spots. It's pretty, at that level, it's pretty well mixed.
Would a guy still want to frost seed clover in the spring?
There's no reason why you couldn't frost seed clover in the spring, because the oilseed radish is winter killed. It's gone. And we're really big on frost seeding red clover. I think it's an excellent way to get a cover crop going. It's easy. It's during a time where you got time. You can go out there even with a quad with a broadcast spreader on the back and just put it on. And we have always been successful with frost seeded red clover. We've never frost seeded red clover and went, oh man, is that a bad stand? It really seems to be a reliable way to do a cover crop in wheat. I think I heard a horn a while ago, didn't I? Does that mean, what's that?
5-minute.
Oh, that was the 5-minute warning. Okay. Take more questions.
Will the radishes control the weeds in the fall too? I mean, what does it
Well,
cover enough to keep the weeds down or no?
When I did the fall sampling at Dean Cantola's, he had a problem with poana throughout his field. And it was really obvious the spots that had oilseed radish had about half the weeds of the ones that didn't.
So it's kind
But-
of like rye a little bit, it suppresses the
It has,
germination?
yeah, it has some allelopathic. It's got glucosinolates and some of those chemicals that inhibit other plants. But on the other side, all of the other locations had done a really good job of spraying for weeds and were totally clean. And so the one that had the highest yield bump, there weren't weeds in that at all. That was really clean wheat. So I thought that might be part of the secret, but then when we realized there wasn't there,
And then you can't spray in the fall either with affinity or anything for the weeds.
no,
It's like we got radishes in here, right?
yeah, well, probably not.
I think they're going to kill it.
Yeah.
Affinity will.
Yeah, they're pretty sensitive to most. I'd have to look up, but I'm guessing I'm not that familiar with what
Because I'm gonna
plants.
start spraying in the fall because in the spring and I put clover in there, I can't get rid of them weeds.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yep.
Think this radish issue could start reducing nitrogen rates?
That's probably if we. I'm glad. I'm going to make a note of that because I think if we should be able to see this year whether we get the effect again this year. And so I'll probably apply for a grant to do it again next year and try to do more about figuring out why we're getting that effect. And that would be good to maybe do a nitrogen rate study, do oilseed radish and do some different nitrogen rates and see if there's a with and without the oilseed radish. That might be a good addition. We're looking at planting date, we're looking at seeding rate. Maybe looking at nitrogen might be something else, and that could be the effect.
Plan now with the radish and without the radish, the standard nitrogen rate across all that.
Yeah. We haven't varied that. Basically, the only difference is that there's planter width strips, alternating planter width strips in the field with and without oilseed radish. The rest of the field's managed entirely the same. We haven't changed anything as far as managing those individual strips. The farmer then just goes and does whatever their normal practices are, and we compare with and without within those practices. So we aren't even making the farmers do the same thing with their herbicides or with their nitrogen, or we just say do whatever you would normally do to that field. Do the same thing to both. So the only difference is with and without oilseed radish.
Have you noticed any differences in the bean chemicals on affecting the radishes?
On the what?
On the radishes. The bean chemicals you used previous.
Haven't noticed that. I think that's far enough removed. Now we have had some issues. We were going to do some on-farm trials putting cover crops in soybeans, and right after soybeans you have to be careful. There's some carryover. There could be some carryover effects right after soybeans, but I think with the wheat in there, that's enough time and adding another crop in. I think that I'm not aware of anything that, but I think it could be an issue, like he was saying, if you were doing fall chemicals on your wheat, you'd have to check and make sure that's not going to kill your oilseed radish early. But there may be some choices where there's some chemicals you could use that wouldn't affect but the brassicas are pretty sensitive, to be honest. It doesn't take a lot to kill them. Yeah.
They generally all freeze out. There's some get away, or you have a wild winter.
What we've found is they pretty much freeze out. They're occasionally, we've seen it where if you get if you get kind of a mild winter with good snow cover the whole time, we've had some get away just because they're insulated and it doesn't get cold enough to freeze them out. But it tends to be, it's not like the whole field, it tends to be sections of the field. The other thing that happened, and I had that happen this year with one of our vegetable cooperators, he had a lot of residue left over in his wheat field. He no-till drilled the oilseed radish into the wheat field, didn't have the drill set up quite right, so he had sections where there was a lot of residue where it looked like he probably just laid the seed on top of the residue. So it didn't germinate in the fall, and then come spring he worked it up and then it germinated, so he had oilseed radish this spring. But it was really easy to kill. He used I think Lorax and took it right out, which was he's a carrot grower, so that took it right out. But I think sometimes it's not that it survives the winter, it just didn't, because of not having seed soil contact, it just makes it through the winter and then it germinates in the spring is probably more likely what's happening.